Welcome to the Solid Verbal.
The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo woo.
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. Ty Hildebrandt here, Dan Rubenstein right on over there. solidverbal@gmail.com, as always, is our email address. Don't forget, you can, as always, find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Snapchat, and of course, at itunes.com/solidverbal. Dan Rubenstein. How are you, sir?
What I'm trying to do right now is take my time and feel you out. When you're a good boy, and I mean Ty, when you're a really, really good boy, why not let him lay with you? You know? That's what I'm assuming.
I have no idea what song you're going with right here.
That's when... Okay, so sometimes I look up songs, and the lyrics start in a very generic and notable way, or a memorable way, and I don't realize they get dirty until like 8 lines in or like 6 lines in, and Christina Milian's Dip It Low gets a little bit racy.
Wow.
It gets a little bit racy.
I was going to say, that got out of hand in a hurry.
Also, I had only remembered the chorus to Juvenile's Slow Motion, which was my first choice for the introduction of this show. And that doesn't even take lines to get into it. It's just smack right there. I think it's just like, my D is in your B is in your L is in your T. And I just refuse to say those things on a college football show.
Well, you just did. And for what it's worth, I don't know either of the 2 songs you just mentioned.
Yes, I'm always happy to have that happen on the show.
So, look, Dan. As they say in the business, and by the business, I mean the podcasting industry.
Of course.
The show must go on.
Mm-hmm.
What we've done over the last couple weeks is forge through Tier 5, what we call Tier 5, and Tier 4, and Tier 3. And now today we get into the real nitty-gritty. We start diving a little bit into the top 16. Again, we are using Bill Connolly's preseason S&P Plus projections. Some folks aren't happy about that. We apologize if your team is not included. We promise at some point we'll get to them.
Yes.
But with that said, there are some heavy hitters in this next group. These are some teams now, as we discussed this week on GChat, some teams that even if you don't look up every single solitary detail about them, it still feels like you know an awful lot about them because we've been talking about them all offseason. These are the teams that theoretically could have a legitimate shot at that playoff.
These are your household names. These are your national teams. This is what we're getting into right now. So this is our top 16.
Yes.
Or the S&P Plus projected top 16. And certainly these teams are household, and there are teams beyond, Tier 2. When we get into Tier 3, we get into Tier 4. Obviously, Texas is a national team, and they were a Tier 5 team. But in terms of household success stories in 2016 at the moment, this is when we're getting into that fat. This is when we need it.
The fat.
The fat.
Let's get to number 16. Right on into the show. Oh, Danny, you're going to love this one.
Let's do it.
It is your Stanford Cardinal.
How dare you?
What is the state?
It's Ryan Nanny's Stanford Cardinal, the one true Stanford fan.
Has he stolen it from you?
No, he is all in on Stanford on a personal level. I just like Stanford every year on a professional level.
Oh, okay. All right. I was going to say, what is the current status of your Stanford obsession?
Well, have you ever met like a diehard Stanford fan? Think about it. Or like come across like diehards online. I mean, I'm sure there are, and they exist, and they may be listening right now. But as a group, they don't really have a presence because they're doing better things.
So where do you stand on the Stanford Cardinal this year?
I am pretty optimistic. They've reached a point, and this is where big time recruiting pays off. And they recruit nationally, and it's extremely difficult with their academic, not restrictions, but the qualifications you need to just get into the school to recruit depth on a high level. And they're at a point now where, like other big schools that are perennial New Year's Day contenders, where you don't worry as much about them losing 6 guys on a side of the ball. You don't worry as much about them losing a quarterback after the success that both Kevin Hogan and certainly Andrew Luck have had. where you look at Stanford and you start just giving them the benefit of the doubt pretty much anywhere on the field, that even if they don't have a big dynamic receiver like, Ty Montgomery showed a few years ago, even if they don't have that guy, I feel like David Shaw, outside of some questionable fourth down decisions and a little bit of conservative play calling, I'd say before last year, you're like, they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure out their new 3 tight end set. They're going to figure out their new dynamic running back, whether it's Tyler Gaffney or whether it's Christian McCaffrey or whoever it is, Toby Gerhart. You just sort of trust that they've scouted and developed well. So to expect anything less than double-digit wins is sort of...
Whoa!
It look, they went 7-5 2 years ago, so it's not unheard of. But to expect it with how well they've recruited and how well they keep coaches around and how well they develop all over the field means that you are buying Stanford's demise, and I'm just not.
Wow. Did I understand you correctly? You're going double-digit wins.
Yeah, I think 10-2 again sounds reasonable to me. I mean, their schedule's not great. I mean, it's difficult, but I within a standard deviation of one game, 9-3 would not be shocking. 8-4 would be weird to me.
I'm on the lower end. I'm on the 8-4 end.
Okay.
And look, there's a lot of turnover here. There really is. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's back, and whoever the new quarterback is, we'll have some decent options out wide. Michael Rector, Francis Owusu. It hurts to lose a guy like Devin Kajus and Austin Hooper, mind you, but still good options out wide. They'll be fine out there. The line loses its entire left side.
Yeah, Graham Schuler and Garnett. Schuler was inside at center, yeah.
I don't care how good Keller Christ or Ryan Burns ends up being at quarterback. There's a breaking in period here that needs to happen in September. And unfortunately for Stanford, given their schedule, it's terribly front loaded. In the month of September, they got USC, UCLA, and Washington. And then, furthermore, in the first 2 weeks of October, they get Wazoo and Notre Dame. So my point is there's not a whole lot of time for a new quarterback to feel comfortable behind a line that loses a fair amount.
But they've recruited the offensive line so well, Ty.
They have. And by the way, that's not the only line issue worth noting.
Correct.
Last year, really thin on the defensive line. Depth, again, is going to be an issue this season.
Mm-hmm.
We always find ourselves, you and I, in the situation where you're on the high end with Stanford and I'm on the lower end. And I don't know why that is. I don't have any natural aversion to the Cardinal. Right. But I feel 8-4 this year. I love Christian McCaffrey, 3,800 combined yards in some way, shape, or form last year. He will again be the focal point of the offense, and it will be exciting to watch.
The most electric football player in the country.
But to me, that is tempered a little bit by the losses on the offensive line, the new quarterback, and some of the questions I have about that defensive front, combined again with what looks to be a front-loaded schedule. So for me, I'm saying 8-4. 8-4 feels about right.
They should be healthier, the front end of their schedule.
They should. Absolutely.
They don't have to wait for... Notre Dame was at the end of the year last year, right?
Yeah. Last game.
So they don't have to wait. They have Wazoo and Notre Dame in consecutive weeks, which isn't great. We were expecting 2 big quarterbacks out of those couple teams, or I guess 4 quarterbacks if you believe Brian Kelly.
17 quarterbacks.
17 quarterbacks. Yes, the schedule, even opening with Kansas State, it's not a patsy. It's not like they're opening with UC Davis, like Oregon is. So it is 6 straight weeks of real teams, even though I don't think we expect a ton from Kansas State. And we are going to do a Kansas State preview, I decided, because somebody in the Facebook comments was like, I don't like this way of doing things because I'm not getting a Kansas State preview.
Okay.
So we're going to do a Kansas State preview at some point before the season. But you're right. I think the fact that they are healthier at the top of that is meaningful, but the fact that they won't be able to take advantage with, big, strong line play on both sides at the back end of their schedule against better teams other than Oregon certainly is a disadvantage for the Cardinal. But what's the worst case scenario record going into the Colorado game? So after their first 6, after they travel to South Bend.
Worst case scenario would probably be 2-4. Yeah.
Okay. That Washington game will be tough, and we'll get to Washington later because it's on the road in Seattle. It's a tough place to play. And going to Notre Dame is tough. But the other ones, it feels like a 4-2 team to me. at that point,
Okay.
if not 5-1. I don't know what it is.
The trade secret about the Pac-12 this year, everything we're saying here still bodes pretty well for Stanford as a Pac-12 contender. The Pac-12, though, as a conference in terms of how it relates to other conferences, once we start talking about the college football playoff, it kind of feels to me like a conference where everybody ends up with 3 losses.
That sort of happened last year, yeah.
Sure, a lot of good teams. I don't know if there are any truly great elite caliber teams.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
we'll see. So you're saying 10-2. I'm saying 8-4.
Yeah, 10-2, 9-3 feels about right to me.
All right, that's fair.
But I'm not a fan of that early schedule.
Moving on to numero 15. The Georgia Bulldogs.
Say 15 in Spanish. You can't say numero without giving me the Spanish word for 15.
15.
15.
Thank you. Number 15 is the Georgia Bulldogs, Dan.
Yes.
It is worth noting that at long last, Mark Richt has literally lost control of Georgia. He has literally lost control. The era has come to an unceremonious end now because Kirby Smart's in town. Did you know, Dan? I don't know if you knew this. I just found this out doing my research. Did you know that Kirby Smart's a Georgia alum?
I did know that. I did. I went to Georgia with him.
We spent so much time making fun of the whole Mark Richt angle that the Kirby Smart angle
Lest we forget.
sort of eluded us. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about Kirby Smart right now? Governor Kirby Smart.
Governor Kirby Smart. Yeah.
According to Jason Kirk. Yeah.
I think he will do a good job. I think he is set up for success, if only because Georgia still has a ton of talent. He's going to be just fine in Georgia. Anytime you put a new coach, though, in the SEC, and I don't care if it's the SEC East, the weaker side of the two, I still have a little bit of trepidation that he'll be able to navigate the bumps and bruises of that, challenge week in and week out.
Right.
I am inclined to say Georgia goes over its 8.5 over under.
Okay.
I don't feel great about it, but
Where's your confidence?
I feel, well, here's what I'm thinking. The 4 toughest games on Georgia's schedule are North Carolina, week 1, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida.
That's neutral, say, right? The North Carolina game?
Correct. If you believe that Georgia is going to win one of those games, going with the over feels like a safe bet. Because the rest of the schedule is something that they can navigate. Now, that's not to say, again, in the SEC,
Right.
that there aren't going to be some trap games. There always are in the SEC. But if you believe that of those 4 games, Georgia can win 1, then going over 8.5, betting essentially on a 9-3 season at the bare minimum, feels like a better bet to me. So I am confident at least to a 9-3 extent, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you have the possibility of a true freshman quarterback, which generally means you have to take away a game that they should win but don't against a schedule that, although they miss some of the better defenses in the SEC, still going against talented defenses. Yes?
Correct.
So generally that feels like a wise thing to do, which doesn't necessarily negate your over of 8.5. They could go 9-3 and show a lot of good and show some shakiness. They are replacing pretty much everybody up front on defense.
Yeah.
Which is worrisome, but they recruited at a pretty high level, and they've got Trent Thompson, the mammoth 5-star nose tackle to build around, which is always a good starting point. They got Jim Chaney, our favorite offensive consultant. Doing contract work now for the Georgia Bulldogs. Yeah, he got a nice little gig there in Athens. Yeah, renting a house, I'm sure. They, even if Nick Chubb has not rehabbed to the level, I don't mean that he's not rehabbing, not trying to rehab, but like has not recovered to the level where he was before. Sony Michel, I think, was about or even over 1,000-yard rusher.
Sony Michel was over 1,000 yards last year. Nick Chubb, in the 6 games he played, averaged 8.2 on the ground. So one of the reasons I think I feel better about the quarterback situation is because if Chubb is healthy and Sony Michel is back there as well, you're talking about a pretty forceful combined effort. Nothing beats a healthy, reliable Chubb, as we described last year. So I feel like if that's the scenario, that gives whatever quarterback a bit of a safety net. They can rely on that running game to a certain degree. You are right, though, about the front 7. And that's where I think the concern is for me. They're talented, but they're really young.
And that secondary is really good, too, though.
The secondary is really good. The pass defense was outstanding a year ago. But up front in the front seven, they're really young. And that youth is going to be tested against UNC.
Mm-hmm.
UNC can run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Ole Miss can throw the ball with Chad Kelly. I don't know if they can run. They haven't been able to run in a while.
Right.
But they're still going to be tested. And certainly Tennessee has a remarkable duo of running backs.
Yeah.
In Jalen Hurd and Alvin Kamara that are going to test you up front as well. So it will not be an easy go for Georgia defensively, but I just feel like offensively, even with the quarterback situation being a bit in flux, you've got two great running backs. There are some decent enough options for that new quarterback to throw to. And ultimately, when you've got Jim Chaney, offensive consultant, things will eventually work their way out.
Yeah.
I feel okay about Georgia.
One of the things that I think there is to like about Georgia is they miss in the West, other than Ole Miss, they miss the quality teams.
Yeah.
Their other West opponent, I believe, let's see, it's Ole Miss and Auburn, which is their year in and year out rival from the West. After that Ole Miss game, and I'm only sort of 80% saying it about the Ole Miss game because we don't know what to expect from Ole Miss and just the setting itself. After that Ole Miss game in late September, they have South Carolina, who may be a mess by early October. They've got the neutral site game against Luke Del Rio or Austin Appleby in Florida. I mean, Florida doesn't have a great defense. They have Auburn at home. They go to Kentucky. So that schedule plays out real nicely the back end. I
like Georgia. I do. I really do.
Do you think they're going to start Eason or the decidedly average Grayson Lambert for a little while and ease Eason in?
I'm going to say Jacob Eason.
Okay. They're going to go for it.
Grayson Lambert is okay. Bryce Ramsey, another guy on the roster, is okay as well. They're okay. These are options, right? Decent options. They didn't get much out of the passing game in terms of efficiency a year ago. And so I don't know if it necessarily hurts you to start some fresh blood there to see if you can get more bang for your buck, as I like to say, out of that passing game. I don't know if it's necessarily as bad of a decision or as tenuous a decision as it might seem on the surface.
They really still are looking for that as our guy in Boston College likes to say, that dude,
yeah,
that receiving option, because there's experience there, but nobody on the level of like AJ Green or even Malcolm Mitchell or guys like that they just haven't gotten. Chris Conley in spots, but they don't have that guy right now.
All right, so I'm going to say 9-3 for Georgia.
Okay,
what are you feeling?
I'm gonna say 8-4.
8-4.
It's gonna take a little bit of adjusting.
Number 14, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
I feel like you drafted the Ohio State had to replace a lot of guys from last year.
Yeah,
on your team.
Yeah. So okay, let's start there. This is all about attrition.
Yep.
And not only because I need the points, but as you know, as everyone knows, Ohio State is a perennial giant in the recruiting game. That's the only possible way you can have such a historically awesome draft class in which, what was it, a dozen of your players get drafted in the first 4 rounds of the NFL draft. Talk about a promo. Talk about a promo for your program. Talk about something that'll breed more success. That absolutely goes on the resume, on the business card, on the letterhead.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that means that you're going to have some seasons like this in 2016 where you are basically rebooting some of your positions.
But you mentioned some of the players, and I know that you're sort of keen on seeing what happens with the skill position guys. They've gotten such good offensive line play these past few years. Mostly, there have been some Michigan State moments where I'm sure they'd like to have some opportunities back, but they return a very good center, and Pat Elfine. I forget how to pronounce things, but the loss of Taylor Decker he was such a mainstay on the left side of that line. It was so good and allowed them to do so much, allowed quarterbacks to develop quickly, as we saw with Cardale Jones a couple of years ago late in the season, that they're going to miss him. I know they returned somebody else on the line, but that's still where they're overhauling, and they need to sort of get in a rhythm there in order for the ridiculous skill position guys they recruited to sort of come into their own. So,
right.
Will we see good or bad JT Barrett? We'll probably see much more good than bad, but certainly with a line learning to gel on the job, you should expect a couple of moments that he would like back. I'm more curious about what they look like defensively.
Really?
Because they've gotten so good on the offensive line. They got so much from their linebackers. I mean, Raekwon McMillan is back and he's one of the best in the country, but Darren Lee, I thought, was perennially underrated, although the NFL thought he was very good and drafted him early. And they've just gotten such good linebacker play that I hope, for the sake of watching high quality football, that whichever 4 and 5 stars, whoever blue chippers are coming in, can replicate what they've gotten from that position. But I think those are the keys. Guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Jalen Marshall, they get the attention, but they've gotten so much from their fronts that has allowed them to sort of come into their own schematically, that curious about what it looks like when they have to replace so much.
Yeah, and of course, the counterpoint is that there are about 125 other teams that would totally settle for this kind of rebooting.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? If you gave them the roster
for Tyquan Lewis and Sam Hubbard, yeah.
If you gave them the roster that Ohio State has this year and said, well, you don't have any experience, but you have these guys, I feel like there are a lot of coaches and a lot of fans who'd be okay with that. Mm-hmm. Still, it's tough to lose Zeke. It's tough to lose. You mentioned Jalen Marshall, Michael Thomas, another guy, Taylor Decker, a guy who you mentioned, some other beef along the line.
Beef.
I think I'm more worried about offense than defense, just because it takes a lot to replace that skill talent. Defensively, Greg Schiano comes in now after Chris Ash left to go to Rutgers, and he's got new faces at all 3 levels of his defense. But again, so much talent. I'm excited to see what he's able to do. Greg Schiano, love him or hate him, he's been pretty good as a defensive mind in football for a long time. I think when you got guys, I said him a couple weeks ago, Malik Hooker, right? At safety, I think he's going to do wonders this year, potentially a star in the making. They're going to be just fine. The good news for them is that they play in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that with any disrespect to the Big Ten, but they're going to have ample opportunity to figure out who their playmakers are on offense and still have, I think, a pretty notable record.
Which Big Ten game before they host Michigan, November 26th, Thanksgiving weekend, which game versus a Big Ten team, and this might be counter to my point that I'm worried about the defense now that I look at the layout of their schedule, which Big Ten team, opponent of theirs, do you say, how are they going to handle that offense?
No, nobody.
Rutgers, Indiana, Wisconsin, Penn State, Northwestern, Nebraska, Maryland, Michigan State, and they go to Michigan State. There's no reason to be confident about Ohio State against Michigan State given the recent history of those 2 teams. But offensively, and what they should be able to handle, especially by the later part of their schedule, when they have Northwestern Halloween weekend, Michigan State November 19th, and Michigan the 26th, got to feel pretty good about that rotation up front, developing into something as mean as it was these past couple of years.
Absolutely, and that's why I say it's good they play in the Big Ten, because
you're right.
Outside of that Oklahoma game, which will no doubt be a challenge early on,
but will not affect their conference schedule.
Outside of that game,
record,
which may have national implications, there's a whole host of teams in the Big Ten that are going to be just fine. They might be bowl eligible. These aren't cupcakes, but these aren't teams that I look at and I quiver with fear. Not offensively, for the most part, not defensively either. Not until you get to Michigan. That's a different story.
Right.
Whole different creature. But I think Urban Meyer will have ample opportunity to get himself in order by the time the game rolls around. And at that point, we could be talking, 10-1 Ohio State team headed into that final game against Michigan. I think this is a 10-2 team this year. I really do. And despite all the turnover, there's just so much talent there. I think Urban Meyer is a good enough coach. 50-4, Dan. That is his record since coming to Ohio State. He's going to be just fine. This team is going to be just fine. They're going to be humming by the end of the year. I like Ohio State at 10-2.
You know what I like about... So there's a team on their schedule that I'm really happy is on their schedule. I'm really happy they're playing, and I'm really happy they look like what they look like. Because I just skipped over it. You should be worried about Indiana's offense. You shouldn't be worried about their defense. But I overlooked Indiana, and that's on me. Indiana's going to have a good offense. Again, Kevin Wilson, year in and year out, is just putting up yards and putting up points. I'm so happy that Indiana exists. I wish they had that defense because I think every conference needs that wild card offensive team. And that's what's so great about Mike Leach at Texas Tech for so long. He probably wasn't going better than 8-4 or 9-3. He did have a magical year. But the fact that Wazoo is what they are in the Pac-12, the fact that West Virginia exists in the Big 12 now with Holgorsen as an air raid and as a Leach guy, the fact that for a little while, Kevin Sumlin and that offense, even though they weren't getting great defensive play with Johnny Manziel, with whoever, they were just going to stretch teams. I wish Indiana had a little bit more defensively. It was just below average instead of atrocious, because outside of the Indiana offense, there's nothing.
No.
There's nothing all that scary right now.
No,
so
I agree.
I'm glad that Indiana exists in the Big Ten, and I hope they can develop into an 8-4 type program that just scares the crap out of everybody.
I'm going 10-2. Where are you at with Ohio State?
10-2 feels right to me.
Let's move on to number 13. Unlucky number 13, as it were. So yeah, look, a lot happened this offseason at Baylor.
Yeah.
Art Briles was fired amid the scandal, which everyone knows about now. Jim Grobe is in. Recruiting is pretty much shot.
Yeah.
Jared Stidham and some others have transferred out. The whole situation is a mess beyond football, and certainly a mess on the football field as well. Here is the thing, though. Baylor still has offense. They still have offense. They still got Shock Linwood and Johnny Jefferson and KD Cannon. These guys are ballers, right? They're going to score points.
You forgot the greatest name on that offense, Lynx Hawthorne.
Lynx Hawthorne, sure.
Yeah.
Possible starting quarterback, Lynx Hawthorne.
You never know.
Never know what's going to happen. They've got firepower, and they're going to score points. And that's going to bode well for them to some degree in the Big 12. They're going to be okay. They're probably a bowl team for sure. But here's why I'm worried. Seth Russell is back from the neck injury, thankfully.
Yeah.
As I just mentioned, Jared Stidham is not. I am worried about Seth Russell because Baylor is effectively rebooting its offensive line. Yeah. I don't want him to get hurt again. That was scary last year. I don't want to see that. And so, for as intrigued as I might be for another dose of that single wing Lynx Hawthorne offense, I'd prefer it not come to fruition again this season.
Agreed.
I want Seth Russell to stay healthy. I'm just a little leery about the depth at that position now that Stidham is gone. And certainly with Seth Russell coming back from what was a very serious injury. They're fine offensively. They'll still score offensively. I don't know if they can stop anyone because the line defensively is in a total rebuild as well. They got KJ Smith back, but that's about it. The linebacking core, okay. Secondary, good enough. But that pass rush, man, it's going to be an issue, and it's going to be an issue early against a team like an Oklahoma State, probably against a team like a TCU, certainly later in the year against Pat Mahomes at Texas Tech. The run defense is going to be an issue against a team like an Oklahoma. It's really hard for me to feel good about this team. And that's totally separate from all the scandal stuff.
Right.
In a football sense, it's just really hard to get excited about what Baylor could do this season.
Yeah, they're replacing both lines, as you mentioned. That coupled with all of the off-field stuff and distractions and the loss of young depth because of the recruiting class going mostly elsewhere. I still feel pretty good about Baylor because the offense is designed to have the quarterback make very quick decisions and mitigate some of the responsibilities of the offensive line. With that said, that's mostly in the pass game, and you can certainly, anybody can, certainly use short passes as a de facto run game. But certainly over these past few years, when Baylor's been going 9-3, 10-2, 11, whatever it was, they're doing so on the ground, and they're doing so beating teams on the ground. The passing game, the big offensive yards are great, but when they beat good teams, they go as their ground game goes. So this year, without proven offensive linemen, and there will be guys that develop, and I expect them by the end of the year to be fine along the line, but have it not be necessarily a strength is concerning, especially coupled with the unease in Waco. So I expect receivers to emerge. I expect KD Cannon to have a good year as long as Seth Russell is healthy. I expect Johnny Jefferson and Shock Linwood to be a very good 1-2. And they, other than Oklahoma State, I don't think they have anybody significant until Halloween weekend. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah.
So they're taking a step in the right direction, scheduling mostly. I'm talking to the Big 12, but it feels like 8-4, 9-3.
Yeah.
I guess I'd go with the under of 9.5 just because they're not quite built to give the benefit of the doubt, especially with this kind of situation. So from a pure football situation, I'm down on them, but I think the consequences of everything that has happened in Waco will be felt 2017, 2018, and so forth.
If you've got a really good offensive line and a really good defensive line, that can cover up a lot of sins.
Mm-hmm.
If they can stay healthy, that can cover up a whole lot of sins on both sides of the football.
Poor choice of words, Ty.
Poor choice of words. I apologize.
Yeah.
That said, not good offensively along the line, not good defensively along the line. A lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Could be good. Too many questions for me to feel that great about what Baylor is going to do this year. So I'm going to say 8-4.
They have a freshman or a sophomore receiver who is so good, just in terms of housing it anytime he has the ball in his hands. Michael Hasty, redshirt freshman. Okay, he's somebody that everybody seems to like as somebody who has home run potential. So worth remembering the name.
Hasty with home run potential. That's
Hasty
sort of
with
fits.
home run potential. Yes,
Sort of fits. All right. Before we move on, Dan, do you play fantasy football?
You know what, Ty? This show's about honesty. I know myself well enough to know that my temperament is probably not for the best with fantasy football, but I love people who do and succeed.
I'm not even going to read this copy here. I'm just sort of going to ad lib.
Speak from the heart.
We started doing this show in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Before 2008, I was honestly now writing some fantasy columns
Mm-hmm.
on a freelance basis, but I was writing them because I
Right.
was really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I was really well read on the subject. Then we started doing this podcast, and it's been like a downward linear relationship
Yeah.
in which I've not even been close to a fantasy football championship. That's where I'm hoping this year FF Draft Prep can help me
That's
out.
so nice. Yeah.
Dave, who listens to our show, again, the CPA, we talked about him last week, put together a really crazy spreadsheet. It just works. You can enter in custom settings. It'll give you a panic pick section, which for me this year, I haven't had much time to explore what I'm doing in fantasy football. I have a hunch that his panic picks reference section is going to come in handy.
It has to.
I'm really excited to use this tool in an actual league. I've used it a couple times in a mock draft setting to see how it performs. And I'm pretty excited about it. He said that some Verballers also cashed in on the deal. He himself's a Verballer, so it's cool for people to help out others who listen to the program. I would urge that everyone check it out. It is a cool thing that he has done. You can find it at ffdraftprep.com. Use the promo code SOLID. You'll get 20% off your purchase. It's ffdraftprep.com. Use the code SOLID. You'll get 20% off. Just download it. Check it out. It truly is something that he put a huge amount of effort into. I do think you'll appreciate it. I certainly have. ffdraftprep.com, promo code SOLID for 20% off.
Streamline that fantasy life, people.
Do it. All right. Number 12. Number 12 is the UCLA Bruins, Dan.
Yeah.
8-4, I believe last year, sort of got away from them a little bit because of injuries, especially on defense.
Oh my God.
At one point, as Bill Connolly rightly notes in his preview, half the defense was on the sidelines because of
sounds
injury.
about right. Mm-hmm.
So, all things considered, you got to feel pretty okay about what UCLA did a season ago, if for no other reason than the fact that we finally saw that Josh Rosen is probably worth all the hype. Probably worth all the hype.
He had that game against, I think it was Arizona State last year. Like, oh, he's a true freshman trying to do too much. Okay. We see that. He has shown throws. He has shown moments. He has shown poise to make people think that he is high NFL caliber if he puts it all together mentally and physically, because he's shown so much. I don't know who he's throwing to.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. And that's what I was going to note next here. Threw for 3,600 yards last year, 23 touchdowns as a freshman. That's all great.
Yes.
This year, needs to do it without Jordan Payton, without Thomas Duarte. Those were his top two targets.
Mm-hmm.
And we should also note without three starters from last year's offensive line.
Right.
On paper, that's a pretty tall order.
One name that I have heard repeatedly, multiple places, people that have been at UCLA and seen him play at fall camp and stuff like that, Theo Howard, a true freshman, has reminded people physically and the way he moves and the way he plays, maybe not the all-around athlete, of Marquise Lee as a freshman.
Okay, that's
that
good.
He has that ability to change the field very quickly. So if Josh Rosen has that weapon, there's every reason to feel like Josh Rosen can take a huge step forward. Not terribly worried about the offensive line. Connor McDermott chose to come back, but Jake Brendel started forever for them at center. So the loss of a center typically sets back the interior of the offensive line, at least for a little while. And just the organization, if the center in the system is calling out shifts and movements by the defense. They have to avoid it. I don't know if this is a Jamora thing. I don't know if this is a shift to Kennedy Palomalu in a more pro style system away from Noel Mazzone and swing past Palooza. They always lose a dumb game or like 3 dumb games.
Yeah.
And when is it that they're going to win 10 games, only lose to teams that are, they only lose to Stanford and USC or something like that, and they don't lose to a team that they're vastly more talented than? It could be this year that they break through, but the evidence is such that they are out-talenting people and not out-coaching or out-playing people. And I know you like Tom Bradley, and certainly with a healthy defense, and Jayon Brown is a huge, huge piece that people are going to be very excited about all season long. 12 games, UCLA. That's how many you have to play at a high level. It's not 9 games. It's not 10. You have to play 12 games at a high level. And we just haven't seen it. And their schedule that they open at Texas A&M. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They go to BYU. I think they miss Oregon and Washington from the north.
Yeah.
Does that sound right to you?
Yep.
They go to Wazoo. They go to Cal, but they have USC, Stanford at home, and they miss Oregon and Washington. So it feels like, with this being a second year of Josh Rosen, with having as much as they have back on defense, particularly that secondary, if they're going to win the Pac-12, it probably should be this year. With the uncertainty at quarterback for Oregon, for Stanford, with the offense at Washington still looking, well, again, all time. But if we're being pessimistic, not all time.
Yeah.
And they're at Wazoo, which is going to be tough. They lost to Wazoo last year. A very good game from Luke Falk. But it feels like if the planets are going to align for UCLA, this would be a wonderful year.
It would be. And again, it feels like a conference that is there for the taking.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of parity in the Pac-12 this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got written down that UCLA as a whole goes 9-3 with 2 losses in conference. Depending on the way things break, that could be enough to get it done. Quite frankly, I don't know. You mentioned the defense, and I feel good about it too. And I really feel good about Tom Bradley. He's a guy that I watched for a long time. Tom Bradley needs to instill more of an attacking mentality. And again, not just because I need points. I'm serious here. He needs to instill more of an attacking mentality.
Yeah, they've got some good ends. Yeah.
Some of that will get better provided UCLA stays healthy.
Right.
They just got to be more aggressive defensively. If they can do that, particularly up front, that's going to help them immensely. What I found crazy about this schedule is that the 2 biggest pressure points for UCLA are going to be tested in week 1 against A&M. Because if they want to win that game, their O-line needs to mesh really quickly and figure out how to block a really solid, maybe the best defensive line in the country. And if they want to win, they're also going to need to be aggressive on defense and get in Trevor Knight's face. I'm not feeling great about Trevor Knight as some sort of air raid quarterback, but he's going to be able to connect up with any one of those 15 targets if he's got ample time to make throws.
That offensive line's not very good.
It isn't, but UCLA is going to have an opportunity to show what it can do against a team that I think can push them in spots that'll make them uncomfortable initially.
And this is all to say, too, that UCLA also has Soso Jamabo, who looks like a very, very good running back if that offensive line continues. Paul Perkins has been sort of so unheralded these past few years because the Pac-12 has been loaded at running back, but I expect Soso Jamabo maybe to even be even better.
I'm saying 9-3. I think they lose week 1 to A&M.
It's the most UCLA record there is.
Yeah, it is. I say week 1 loss at A&M, tough game. Yeah. Credit to them for scheduling it. But week 1 loss to A&M, and then I'm feeling a home loss against Stanford and another home loss later in the year to USC.
God, UCLA has to go into the state of Texas without Jerry Neuheisel. Damn. I didn't even think about that until now.
I have a fact that may only interest Tom Hammond as well about UCLA.
Which is?
I don't know how this eluded us for so long. Did you know both of UCLA's projected starters at offensive tackle are 6'9"?
Really? That's Jonathan Ogden height. Where did he go to college?
UCLA.
Did go to UCLA.
Connor McDermott and Colton Miller are both 6'9".
By the way, as it relates to UCLA and Josh Rosen, can I say something about the way Jim Mora has handled Josh Rosen drawing attention to himself for both interesting and immature reasons?
I think I know what you're going to say here, but I'd love to hear you actually say it.
The fact that Jim Mora says things like, do you want to be Peyton Manning or do you want to be Johnny Manziel? As if those are literally the only two options that Josh Rosen could pursue.
It's a binary world, Dan.
He could just be Josh Rosen. He could be a little bit of Aaron Rodgers. He could be, and by the way, Johnny Manziel was nothing like Josh Rosen. The fact that he could be a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of, himself, that's cool. That's okay.
Jim Mora seems perennially just grumpy about his job.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, because it's a good job. It's a good job to be at UCLA. Maybe he really wants to get back in the NFL.
I think they have a full-size practice field now at UCLA. I think that's the thing. So why is he grumpy?
I just don't get it. He's always grumpy.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Here we go, Dan.
I'm going to sit back.
Yeah. Number 11 is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who, if you believe Brian Kelly today, said that they're going to be playing two quarterbacks this year, at least in the Texas game. I will get to that momentarily. Don't start with that music. Don't even start. Here.
Sorry. That was like...
We'll fight fire with fire, dog.
Oh, because that's the song that the young people love. That's the song. Wait for the drop. Wait for the drop, everybody.
It was the first thing that I had come to mind. Could have gone Lil Wayne. Went fight song.
You could have gone freak bass, sir.
Could have gone freak bass, too.
Yeah.
How dare you? Notre Dame 10-2 a year ago.
Yeah.
As you know, the first loss was very controversial because it wasn't a monsoon against Clemson. Second loss was a really good game. If you're a college football fan, it was fun to watch. That shootout against Stanford.
Yeah.
If you really want to be biased in your Notre Dame fandom, you could say they shouldn't have lost it. But sometimes you do lose games like that when you don't play any defense. And in that particular game, they didn't. They then go on to the Fiesta Bowl, get beaten pretty soundly by Ohio State. 10-3 overall. Good season, considering Malik Zaire going down in week 2 and needing to rebuild the offense around Deshaun Kaiser. I thought a really good season for Notre Dame. The problem now is that they lose a lot to graduation in the draft. You mentioned it earlier. Ronnie Stanley, Will Fuller, CJ Prosise, Jalen Smith, Sheldon Day, Joe Schmidt, Kavari Russell. Who did I miss? Nick Martin.
Corey Robinson to politics. Come on, you're going to talk about Tom Hammond facts. You're not going to mention him?
Corey Robinson leaving the sport of football to pursue other endeavors is absolutely the front runner for Tom Hammond's factoid that may only interest him.
Yeah.
Without question, okay? Obviously, you got to replace those difference makers, but there's plenty of talent to step up and be the next generation. We just don't know who they are yet. And that's the part that's unsettling. Playmakers don't always develop. I feel like the talent is there. I feel like there are some who will. I don't know if enough will to replace those that are walking out the door.
Okay.
So with all that said, of course, this season begins and ends with who is Notre Dame's starting quarterback. I think at some point it's going to be Kaiser. I just feel like what he did last season after Zaire went down, you could make a case, I guess, for Zaire being the right fit for that offense if they decide to rely more on the running game because they have so many running backs. But I'm still hitching my wagon to the Kaisera this year. All right.
Kaisera.
Who will Kaiser throw to? Who will anyone throw to?
I'd love to know.
It helps to have Torrey Hunter Jr. back. It looks like Equinemius St. Brown has the physical tools.
Yep.
Kevin Stefferson's going to be great out of the slot.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of them can replace Big Bill Fuller. So they're going to be targets out there. They're going to be targets who are going to emerge and who fade. Just going to take these guys a while to get sorted out. This is all a long way of saying that Notre Dame's going to be fine offensively. They'll be fine. Defensively, I'm hopeful that Brian Van Gorder can finally fully install his attacking 4-3 mentality.
Sure.
In this team. I'd love to see him find a way to do that in the defensive backfield. Because if you watched the Stanford game last year, you know that there was a huge gaping hole back there that really made things kind of awkward and embarrassing. Now, they had injuries, okay? If they can be healthy and get some consistency from a guy like a Max Redfield, who I'm still waiting.
I think everybody is.
I'm still waiting for him to live up to that hype. If they can get more of a consistent presence back there, that will help. If they can get a guy like a Niles Morgan to step up at linebacker, that will help. I'm hoping that Jaron Jones and Jerry Tillery can continue to give that defensive line a presence. I'm hoping Dalen Hayes can step up as a true freshman and provide something of a pass rush. But quite frankly, I don't know where I stand on the defense. I think they'll be good enough. I think they'll be good enough, but I don't know if they're elite. The schedule is such that there are about 7 or 8 bowl teams on it. A lot of those teams that feel like 8-4, 9-3. That's a hell of a trick because if it works, you've got a great strength of schedule, you've got a good record, and you've got 10 or 11 wins. Maybe if something breaks, you put yourself in position for a playoff.
Right.
So I'm optimistic about offense. I've got real questions about defense, as every single person listening to this does. This is, I feel, legitimately a 10 or 11 win team. It's a good team. I need to see playmakers develop before I'm willing to say that they're elite. They can get there. They have elite talent, but I don't know anything about the playmakers yet. So for that reason, I say 10-2, 11-1, probably a loss to a team like USC late in the year. That game always seems to give them some
looking
trouble.
At the order of their schedule to see if they have any tough back-to-backs. Usually they don't. They open at Texas. Michigan State is surrounded by Nevada and Duke. Cincy State. Stanford, Miami, Navy is a little bit tricky. Navy will have a new quarterback. Stanford will have a new quarterback. They go to USC, but they get Stanford at home. Their schedule is pretty great.
See what I mean? Like, it's not a bad schedule. It's not jet puffed or Mr. Softy soft. It's just really, really solid is what it is.
I think it's tough, but I think it's not Wisconsin's.
Agreed. So I like Notre Dame. I think they'll be a 10 or 11 win team. For a while, they'll probably, thank you for the soundtrack. I appreciate it. For a while, they'll probably have their hat in the playoff ring. It just feels like there's enough of a loss really on both sides of the ball for them to drop a dumb one. Okay. So I'm going to say a loss to USC. And,
are you at all worried about the Texas game? With a new Texas offense that you really haven't seen all that much of, probably a true freshman quarterback, some interesting power running against a newish defensive front, a talented defense, but nothing that I think is all that scary at the moment.
Yeah, I'm worried about it.
Okay.
Just because the game is at Texas and, we don't know what we've got in Shane Bichelle yet. I think Notre Dame will handle Texas. It won't be 35-3.
Right.
It'll be a closer game, but Notre Dame should outclass Texas if what we see on paper translates to the field.
I'm good with that.
Moving on.
Final team?
We've got
we got two more.
Two more here.
Yeah.
Number 10, Dan, the Washington Huskies.
Uh-oh. Here they come. Shh, be cool, be cool.
I'm just going to say it once. We're talking a lot about Washington and the hype train and finding losses and not finding losses.
Hard to spot one, Ty.
Is now the right time, or is it too early to wonder how Washington would fare against the Jacksonville Jaguars? I'm just asking for a friend.
No, it's reasonable. I mean, it's hard to immediately see a loss on that schedule. Everywhere you look, they're 2, 3 deep at all-American caliber players. Now, I want to present both sides to this.
Please do. Please do, because this is a 6-6 team from a year ago.
It is.
And now people are picking them to win the conference. So the hype train, the hype machine is in full working order very early.
ESPN's Brad Edwards, I believe, has them in his playoff.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Penciled in those Huskies.
Do it with pencil. If you're going to write them into the playoff, Mr. Edwards, whose work I respect immensely, just do it with pencil. That's all I ask.
I mean, when you return nearly every player from a borderline bowl team, how do you not freak out?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to comprehend this.
How do you not just assume everybody's going to be twice as good as they were last year? It boggles the mind how people aren't thinking about this in the correct way. This Washington team is going to run through the Pac-12 like a hot knife through butter. Now, if you are going to dig extremely deep about concerns,
it's heresy, but continue.
If you were going to say, humor me, give me some concerns that might crop up, because college football is unpredictable week to week, I might say that Jake Browning wasn't all that good versus good teams. I might say that. I don't think I would. That Jake Browning was kind of a disappointment against the better teams on the schedule, and they are pointing to big point totals at the end of the year that were mostly because of the defense putting the offense in extremely good field position. But I won't, Ty.
No, don't do that.
That's not something that I am about.
That's a trap. Don't do that. Yeah, you're right, by the way. They beat USC a year ago in a really ugly game. That's about it. In terms of good teams, quote unquote, better teams, that was about it.
I might point to the fact that their best and one true receiving option is coming off of a season-long torn ACL injury from last year. And Jake Browning has not really had the greatest of weapons put in front of him to throw to. I don't think I can bring myself to say that, because Jake Browning is the chosen one.
Yeah.
We know about we know what happens when highly touted Jakes go to Washington. And that's greatness.
Sure.
That's greatness, Ty. Myles Gaskin was very good last year.
Yes.
It's inarguable that Myles Gaskin was a special talent in the backfield last year, and that they bring back their offensive line. It's inarguable that Elijah Qualls was really good stuffing up the middle in that Danny Shelton role for that defense that's almost entirely back. Azim Victor is one of the better inside or middle linebackers in the country. Goes sideline to sideline. They've developed. Buda Baker is an exceptional talent, both in the defensive backfield and returning kicks and punts or whatever he does with the ball in his hands in special team situations. I think it's Sidney Jones is the corner that is extremely good. But again, if you are going to dig, you might point to the fact that they are not all that interesting offensively. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because their defense is special enough to launch this team into to go from a 5-6 win team to 11 or 12. And that's just the facts that we need to make peace with.
I'm on record, Washington 15-0. All right. So I'm throwing that out there. Hypothetically, though. Hypothetically, if I were to try and find some losses, I might look at that road game against Oregon.
God, Washington's earned the benefit of the doubt at this point.
I might also be inclined to look at that Apple Cup game
at Wazoo
in the year. Yeah, at Wazoo, which is a weird place to play, and Wazoo's got an offense. I'm unsure of how much firepower we'll see out of Washington offensively this year, so there's possibly a loss. Maybe USC, because they're going to be tough.
Well, fingers crossed. If you're Washington, you got to get Peyton Bender back in that Apple Cup.
Right.
Wazoo. You got to get him back in there.
So look, I'm just saying, there are probably, if you really are trying to invent scenarios, this is all hypothetical, right?
Using our information telescopes.
Yeah, there could be 4 losses on this schedule.
Could be. And you know what, Ty? In any other scenario, if a 6-6 team made a leap to 8-4, you'd say, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like that. Good step forward. But not with this Washington team.
No, they are definitely going 15-0, but there is a chance they could go 8-4.
Woo-woo.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else to say on Washington?
No, that's about it. That defense is spectacularly good. In all earnestness and the genuine quality that I can muster. That defense is excellent.
Moving on, final team tonight. The Tennessee Volunteers.
Yes.
Please allow me a second, Dan. Indulge me in quoting a wise prophet.
Uh-huh.
He goes by the name of Fat Joe, and he once said it's about trust, babe.
Well, was that him or was that Aaliyah who said that?
It was Aaliyah or Ashanti. It was in that song.
Oh, yeah. Ashanti is what I meant. Yeah.
It's about trust, babe.
Yeah.
Do you trust Tennessee this year?
Well, I think the question on top of that question Sunday is one that Bill Connolly's been posing, and that's why don't Tennessee coaches trust Josh Dobbs to throw interesting or deep or complicated passes? That's an interesting question. Do I trust Tennessee and what they've put together talent-wise, especially on defense? Yeah, I do. Tennessee's going to be, at the very least, good this year.
They were good last year, too, for what it's worth. Now,
yeah,
fell short of expectations in going 8-4, but this was not a team that got its clock cleaned by really good competition. We're talking about 4 close losses here to Oklahoma and, Florida still was really good defensively. Arkansas.
Oh, you're
Alabama.
Doing that Oklahoma game. Big disjustice. Injustice.
I'm trying to paint this in a positive sense, Dan, okay? Work with me.
Yeah.
All right. What I'm building to is that every preview I read said that Butch Jones is out of excuses, and it feels a little harsh to me because this was a good team a year ago. They didn't quite convert on all of their opportunities. No one's arguing that, but this was still a good team last year, and there aren't that many things that need to go right in 2016 for them to be great.
I think that's fair.
What it comes down to for Tennessee this year, live up to your potential. Live up to it on offense. You got to like what Butch Jones has done. He's got a team filled with firepower. He just hasn't been great at beating those better teams on the schedule. And that's the rub. That's the rub. If you look at the schedule, there are like 4 of those games against quote unquote better teams. 2 at home, 2 on the road. And 3 of those 4 teams are going to have good defenses that are going to key on the run and force them to do something with Josh Dobbs.
Oh, you can't force them to do anything with Josh Dobbs. They will do what they want.
Maybe that's the case, but there is enough defensive firepower on this schedule to make him uncomfortable, to make that offense uncomfortable, to force them to do something with the ball other than give it to Jalen Hurd or Alvin Kamara. And Josh Dobbs, he just got to take the next step as a passer, get better at throwing down the field, be more consistent, get the right plays called to him to do that. Whatever it is, I think that's the final frontier for Tennessee in 2016. Figure out a better way to use your quarterback.
You know what they did add, though, this year?
Hey, yeah, I want to shoot, baby, shoot.
What a hire tie.
Yeah.
They added Bob Shoop. And teams that are scared to let their quarterbacks loose have a big advantage when they have a defense that can cover up for a lot of conservatism on offense. And
yeah, wow.
Man, do they have a lot of toys.
I know.
For Bob Shoop to play with.
You know, for as hard as it is to trust a team like this, for me, just because they haven't been trustworthy against great teams, against better teams, it's a lot easier to trust them when you got a defense like that. Loaded at all 3 levels. You got Derek Barnett, who's an NFL talent. He can rush the passer, 10 sacks, something like that a year ago. Jalen Reeves-Maben had 85.5 tackles a year ago. Cameron Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley, great at cornerback. I am dying to see Khalil McKenzie, and I don't even think he's going to crack the starting lineup, Dan.
Yeah.
Look at that. Now you add Bob Shoop. My boy Bob Shoop. Damn, girl, that's good.
Yeah, if I were to tell you Team X brings back a good chunk of their offense and defensive front, can run the ball really well with 2 really good running backs, and has super highly regarded defensive coordinator who has all sorts of blue chip talent to play with on all 3 levels, you got to say, don't know who you're talking about, but 10-2 is not unreasonable.
No
matter the conference.
I'm just kind of in the gray area here with the Vols. I love the defense. It's going to be game changing. And if you're an opponent, there are going to be no easy points against Tennessee. The flip side, though, is that there are going to be teams, as I said, that I think can take away the run, can key on the run, and force Josh Dobbs to pass downfield. And that's where it could get a little hairy for Tennessee. I am not buying the hype. I'm saying 9-3.
Okay, so not a huge step forward for the Vols, because this would sort of be the year. Next year looks not bad either, but look at this. Let's go through the FBS teams on their schedule. And you just stop me when you are positive about a quarterback who scares you on Tennessee's schedule.
Go ahead. I know where this is going.
Virginia Tech, Florida, Georgia. You're not stopping me there.
No, I didn't.
Texas A&M, Alabama. We don't know who it's going to be. South Carolina, Kentucky, Missouri, Vanderbilt. You didn't stop me.
Are you done? You going to keep going?
I have completed my list.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say Justin Fuente can't develop somebody early on for Virginia Tech, which isn't to say Jacob Eason by October 1st isn't somebody who's a little bit scary, particularly at home. Alabama's developed pretty much every quarterback these last few years into a winning SEC quarterback at the very least. South Carolina it's Brandon McElwain, I think, the true freshman who's intriguing. There are quarterbacks that could emerge, but as of right now, pretty good spot to be in.
I agree. And effectively by saying 9-3, I am subscribing to the whole big game Butch storyline.
All right.
And that's almost the only reason I say it. There really aren't many holes here. If you're looking for reasons to doubt Tennessee,
I still think it's Dobbs. I think that's the reason to doubt them.
Yeah.
That in a big game and he has to drive them down, down 4 with 3.5 minutes left and has a 3rd and 13. I don't feel great about Josh Dobbs.
I don't either. But to your point, there really aren't any teams. There aren't any quarterbacks, but there aren't any teams on this schedule that I look at and say that's an automatic loss.
Yeah.
Bama's not an automatic loss. Not with this team. Georgia, Florida, no way.
No.
So I like Tennessee, and I hope they are able to live up to expectations, because if they do, they're going to be very, very exciting to watch. But there's at least enough recent data to suggest that perhaps Tennessee won't and could end up going 9-3.
They do have Florida, Georgia, A&M, and Alabama in consecutive weeks. Not ideal, not the greatest, but man, I like Tennessee. I think a lot more than you do.
Probably. I like Tennessee. I'm not willing to buy into the hype quite yet until I see what they do in a bigger game scenario.
Okay.
Sound fair?
That's okay. Yeah, that's fine by me.
So that's all we got, man. That's all we got. We went through Stanford,
Yes.
Georgia, Ohio State, Baylor, UCLA, Notre Dame, Washington, and Tennessee. We've got 8 more teams to go next week. Before we get into our first week 1 preview
Wow.
of the 2016 season, can you believe it?
The offseason grows up so fast.
It does.
You blink and you miss it. Quick thank you to the SEC logo. I don't know who runs the SEC logo.
I think
but
it's the actual logo.
It is the actual logo. He or she, if this person is not a logo, does a great job. Courtney, a.k.a. the CU Tiger, I think a Clemson fan there, 1289. Scooter Downey, Chris Jackson, Matt Workman, Sam Watts, Patty Estes.
Yeah.
Estes.
Okay.
Christina, Pachioric?
Christina
Pachioric, Alex Lyshinskin, Sean Riley, Mark Ennis. We love Mark Ennis. Mangus, aka Mangus. I don't think he's Mangus anymore.
No.
He's our Louisville bud.
He's our boy, yeah.
And Haley Schmeling, which is a great name. Thank you, everybody. All of those people either shared the show on Facebook or Twitter or reviewed the show on iTunes. And I think this week, if you like our show, retweet it and tag somebody else, or share it on Facebook and tag somebody else who you think might like the show, because we're just our fun little universe of college football weirdos, and we always want more people to hang out. So thank you to those people. Keep sharing, keep liking, keep reviewing, and doing all sorts of fun stuff to help us out. We're locked in on a shirt design, Ty.
Yeah. I think this is the best shirt that you...
Best shirt yet? Yes.
This is the best shirt that you've put together. And here's what we're going to do this time around.
Yeah, to tell the people.
There has been so much demand for our shirts, and we constantly get inundated with people who say, look, we are dying to buy a shirt. We can't get to our computer quickly enough to buy them before they sell out in my size.
Right.
We've done these typically on a Friday. We send it out via our newsletter or Facebook or Twitter. Not everyone is connected all the time. This time around, we're going to do a pre-order.
Yes.
We're going to do a pre-order. We're going to post that on our site at some point very soon. So stay tuned to all of our social media channels.
Yeah, we'll tweet it. We'll post it on Facebook, everything. Yeah.
We're going to do a pre-order. You can pay for it up front. We'll tell you the date that we're going to order the shirts. We'll tell you the date that they're going to ship out the shirts. And then I think everybody will be happy. But I am very pleased with this design. I'm excited. I want at least 2.
I like that you've officially retired from receiving hundreds of shirts at your residence.
It's been a bit of a grind, Dan.
Relying on both Solid Wife Kate, Mama H, and yourself to do all sorts of packaging and fulfillment. Those hundreds of shirts were hand sent to each and every one of you. But I think we have all witnessed Ty's retirement, and we will have
That's
our
right.
shirts fulfilled by actual professionals.
Sent to you from the Lehigh Valley with love.
Yes.
And on that note, we
Ty
should point
kisses
out,
every one of the shirts.
I kiss every shirt. We should point out that all of the money from our last 2 t-shirt sales is going in memory of Avery Huffman to the Michael Mosier Foundation to fight DIPG.
Yes.
I am in the process of drafting up a letter that can accompany that check, that donation, and I will post that online so that everybody can see not only what we're writing to these fine folks and their fine work, but how much of your contributions, again, 100% will go to
100. Yep.
100% will go to helping fight the good fight. I will post all those details online so people can see what they've contributed to. It's a really great thing. We're happy to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Dan. Well, on that note, did you want to do a quick review? Are you tired to do the review?
No, I'm never too tired. I forgot about it, which is to say I never prepare for this anyway.
Yeah.
So hold on. I'm just going to stretch my back. Okay. Is this? I think this is the song. Ladies and gentlemen, Sirius XM, welcome back to the show. We're going to start with a tier 2 team, Stanford, number 16. Over under 8.5 games. You know they've got those big uglies up there in Palo Alto. They like to call themselves nerds, but they're dominating the Pac-12 North. And Christian McCaffrey, my God, what a talent. Georgia coming in at number 15. Bringing in Bama's Kirby Smart. Bringing in the big visor, Governor Kirby Smart. What is he going to do? Got that real talented freshman. Let me ask you this. Do we believe in the Dogs in 2016? Great question. Give us a call on the Instaloop hotline. Number 14, Ohio State. Urban Meyer getting his boys, getting those Buckeyes ready to go. Hard to discount Urban Meyer and what he's able to do, but replacing a lot of players. Really love what Joey Bosa was able to do up there in Columbus. Baylor, gotta worry about Baylor. What are they going to look like this year under Jim Grobe? Obviously, all sorts of things happening off the field, but gotta be concerned about what's going to happen with those Bears running that wide open offense. UCLA, number 12, make or break year for Jim Mora. Can he break through? Everybody loves Josh Rosen. Is he going to break through for that NFL draft in 2018? Feels like they're always losing a game they shouldn't, but I love these baby Bruins. And then Notre Dame at number 11, America's team, Notre Dame. Dave Davis Dental loves Notre Dame. They love giving you half off molars, canines, and incisors. Notre Dame, the America's team. What are they going to do at quarterback? Are they going to rotate those guys? Let us know here on the Instaloop hotline. Washington at number 10, the Huskies. RBAC. The Huskies are back this year. Dormant national power. I really do see Washington making that big leap in the Pac-12, and Tennessee at number 9. The hype train is a-coming. Josh Dobbs, can he be that next great Tennessee quarterback? Is Josh Dobbs Peyton Manning? Give us a call here on the Instaloop hotline. Tennessee breaking through SEC East, not all that challenging. Butch Jones done a great job recruiting down there in Knoxville. So those are your tier 2 teams. Sirius XM, thanks for paying attention. We'll see you soon.
Stay solid.
Peace.